Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So again, we're discussing Mumuksupadi by Pila Lokacharya with a commentary by Manavala Mahmudi. And up until now, we've been talking about, we're in the Tira Mantra Prakaranam, which is the first part, which speaks about the first mantra, which is important to us out of three mantras. The Astakshara mantra, the Dwaya mantra, and the Charma Sloka are the three mantras. So we're talking about the Astakshara mantra, also known as Tira mantra, Om Namo Narayanaya, 8-syllable mantra. That mantra is made up of 3 words, 8 syllables, but 3 words. The first word is Om. And we have, up until now, we have had 65 sutras, right, telling us the meaning, some general meanings, but also defining, in the latter part of that, defining the letter A, what the letter A means, and what the letter U means, because the syllable Om is made up of these 3 letters, A, U, and M. So now, with the 66th sutra, we're going to start explaining about what the letter M means, the esoteric meanings behind these different letters. So up until now, we've understood the esoteric meanings of A and U, now M. So let's have a look at the text. Okay, so just finishing off here, and let's hide the sidebar there. Okay. So at the end of Sutra 65, he says, thus he has presented the letter, and I think this is a mistake, it should be letter U, because previously we talked about the letter U. So after this, he presents the letter M, the 3rd letter. So he explains the letter M. So the first sutra here is the letter M, being the 25th letter and denoting knowledge, refers to the soul. Okay, so as it is said, so there are the 25th letter is interesting because there are about 50 letters, 48 to 50 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet. When it says the 25th letter, it means the 25th consonant. So we know in the alphabet we have vowels and consonants. In Sanskrit, the vowels come first, and then after the vowels, there's a group of 25, which are what we call stops, or they're types of consonants, right? The certain groupings of consonants, and they're grouped 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. There are 5 groups of 5, which make up 25. So they go, so as it is said, right? As it is said, the 5 elements of the Ka group, the first group begins with the letter K. The 5 groups of the 5 elements of the Ka group are Ka, Ka, Ga, Ga, Na. The sense organs, right? So in Sankhya philosophy, which has to do with the creation and the different elements and things like that, okay, there are different elements, and there are different, they're all given, they're all equated with different letters in the alphabet, let's say. So these first group of 5 letters, right? These are called gutturals in the Sanskrit alphabet, and they're equated with the sense organs. There are 5 sense organs. The 5 elements. The 5 elements. What are they? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Yeah, or space, right? These are the first group. Kaka, gaga. The sense organs are the C group. The C group is cha, cha, ja, ja, nya. Right, the sense organs. There are 5 sense organs. Then there's a next group. Oh, there are 10 sense organs, right? There are 10 sense organs because there are working senses and there are knowledge acquiring senses, which are called karmendriyas and jnanendriyas. So the word indriya means senses. So a karmendriya is a working senses. And the jnanendriya, the knowledge acquiring senses. Maybe I should have put that the other way around. Knowledge acquiring comes first normally. So the knowledge acquiring, so touch, taste, smell, the ears, the eyes, the nose, the tongue, the skin, right? And then we have Then we have the working senses, the hands, the legs, the genitals, the anus, it escapes me right now. Okay, so then the next group is the cerebral chakra, right? So you've got the cha-cha-ja-ja-nya and the cha-cha-da-da-na, which are the sense organs. So there are 10 sense organs. 5 elements, 10 sense organs, which are divided into 2, the Gyanendriyas and the Kamendriyas, 5 each, right? And then we have cha-da-da-da-na, the dentals, right, produced on the teeth or the back of the teeth, with the tongue touching the back of the teeth, right? They are the 5 kinds of sense perception. So the sense perception is the and the five sense objects: taste, smell, etc. Then the mind. So we've got we're up to 20, and we've got 5 more. So the last 5 are pa, pa, ba, pa, ma. So pa, the first pa, is the mind. Ha is ahankara or ego, false ego. Pa, pa, ba, and pa are mahat and prakriti. Mahat and prakriti are conglomerate of the material nature before the time of creation, according to the Sankhya theory of creation, which is accepted by Sri Vaishnavism. Okay. Right, so that leaves us with only one letter at the end. One letter at the end. So we've gone through all 24 letters of the alphabet, 24 consonants of the alphabet, and we come to the last consonant in these 5 groups. And the last consonant is ma, the letter M. So the Atma, or the Jivatma, or the sentient being, or Chit Shakti, right? Chit, it's called Chit. We have those 3 principles in Vedanta: Chit, Achit, and Ishvara. Chit means the sentient being, Achit and Ishvara, right? We understand the souls. We know that there are sentient beings, right? We also know that there's a material universe. So that's Chit and Achit. Achit means Chit means sentient, Achit means insentient, and then Ishvara. Ishvara means God, who is above and controlling and creating and supporting all of that, right? So this letter M has to do with Chit, has to do with the Jiva, has to do with the individual soul. Okay, so there's a quotation here. According to the text, this is attributed to a text called Padmottara Purana, which may be the last part of Padma Purana. Chapter 254, texts 25 to 27. We could look that up. But apparently this quotation here is supposed to be from that place. Okay. So continuing on. So we know that the letter M represents the Atma, or represents the individual soul. Thus, the letter M is not like the 24 letters from K to B, right? Which are the 24, which refer to the 24 tattvas of Prakriti. Tattvas means principles, Prakriti means material nature. So there are 24 principles of material nature above them. And Lord Krishna also says this in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter. He says, Bhumir apo nalo vayu, calm. Bhumir apo nalo vayu, calm. These are earth, water, fire, air, ether, right? Then he says calm. Then he says mano buddhir evacha ahankara, right? So Bhumir apo nalo vayu, calm, mano buddhir evacha ahankara iti yamme bina prakriti astada. Bina means separated. These are my prakriti astada. These are my 8 separated energies which make up material nature. So here, those 8 are expanded here to 24. There are 24 tattvas in Prakriti, in material nature. Then he says in the next verse, Krishna says, Aparayam itastvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahabaho. Jiva bhuta. So the jiva bhuta, the living being, jiva means living, bhuta means being, living being. The living being is the actual living being, not the body, but the soul, the Atman, is above those. Aparayam itastvanyam, aparayam. Above those 8, or here 24, above those things, or those separated energies, is the soul, are the souls, the sentient beings. So Thus, the letter M is not like the other 24. It's separate. It's different because it's not a tattva. It's not a principle of material nature. It's the soul. The soul is different from material nature. Remember we said chit and achit? They're different. So achit means material nature. That can be divided up into these 24 elements. And then chit is only the soul. Separate. So it is a 25th letter, which when conjugation means, adding verbal endings to it, according to the root man, meaning to think, or manu, meaning to understand, right? Refers to knowledge. Okay, so the letter M, right, means the living being, means the soul, means the Atman, right? And just like we saw some other words mean other things, right? If we take, I think we were looking at the letter A, we were looking at the letter U. If we take it as a noun, it means this. If we take it as a verb, it means this. So here what he's saying is if you take the letter M to be a verb, if you take the letter M to be a verb, right, then the meaning, either as a verbal root man or the verbal root manu, it means to think or to understand. So the soul itself is a thinking, understanding entity. It's a sentient being. What basically is saying here is what Descartes said in Europe: I think, therefore I am. Right. So the footnote says the root man can be conjugated by the 8th manute or the 4th manvate conjugations. Okay, so in Sanskrit there are 10 conjugations of verbs. What does that mean? To anybody but a grammarian, that doesn't mean anything. But there are different ways that the verbal roots have endings added to them in Sanskrit. So those verbal roots are put into different groups. Those groups are called conjugations. So those conjugations will have different ways of putting the endings on. So what he's saying here is that according to Sanskrit grammar, right? Sorry, this is a little bit dry, but according to Sanskrit grammar, the root man, which means to think or to understand, can be conjugated in 2 different ways. If it's conjugated in one way, it becomes manute. If it's conjugated another way, it becomes manvate. Okay, no big deal. Which both means he thinks or he thinks or he understands or it understands. Though often used interchangeably, traditional grammarians recognize an original difference in meaning. The former means to understand, the latter means to think. Okay, so what he's saying here, what Pillai Lokacharya and Manavala Mamuni are saying here is it doesn't matter whether we consider this letter M to be a verbal root man in the 8th conjugation or a verbal root man in the 4th conjugation, right? If it means the 8th conjugation, then it means to understand. If it means in the 4th conjugation, it means to think. So it means both. We can take it to mean both. It means to think or to understand. It means consciousness. Consciousness involves thinking and understanding. Okay, so it is the 25th letter, and when conjugated according to the roots man, meaning to think, or manu, meaning to understand, it refers to knowledge. Therefore, the soul is a knower. Basically, what he's saying here is the soul is a knower. M indicates that it's a knower. The letter M indicates that it's a knower, right? Therefore, it is the 25th principle. As it is said, the 25th principle is Purusha. Now, we don't know exactly where that quote is from. The 25th is Purusha. We're not sure whether that, it sounds Upanishadic. It sounds like it comes from Upanishad, but we haven't found the quote for that. And the Atman, the other quote is, the Atman is the 25th. Now that we have a quote for, and that comes from Yajurveda Astakam 1.247. Okay. So we have Shruti Pramana saying that the Atman is the 25th. The Atman is the 25th. So that actually in the Veda it says that. So that justifies our understanding that the 25th principle in this material world is the Atman, or the soul. And that soul is different from the other principles, because the other principles are achit, or insentient or unconscious. The soul is conscious, or can have knowledge, can think, and can have understanding. Okay. So the soul is said to have knowledge as its essential nature and knowledge as its attribute. Right. So what does that mean? What's the difference between the essential nature and the attribute? Right? Okay. So an attribute is a thing which can be separated from the essential nature sometimes, right? So if we have a brown cow, right, the brownness and the cowness are two different things, right? Because we can have a black cow and a white cow and a brown cow, right? So we can have other cows that are of different colors, right? But if we say that's a brown cow, we're identifying it according to its attribute, the brownness, right? To distinguish it from the black and the white cow, right? So that is what we mean by attribute. So knowledge is the attribute of the soul. The soul has knowledge as an attribute. At the same time, the soul also has knowledge as its essential nature. The soul has knowledge as its essential nature, right? So you cannot separate knowledge from the soul. You can't have an insentient soul. You can't have an unconscious soul, right? That you can't have a dull matter soul. The soul is always sentient, is always got this idea of knowledge, always. Its knowledge can be obscured, of course, by Maya, by the material nature of Krishna can put the soul into illusion. The soul can be an illusion, but the soul always has this consciousness, right? So there's another quote here, and this is from Prashna Upanishad 4.9, right? The Purusha is composed of knowledge, the Purusha. Now, Purusha simply means a person, right? So there are two persons, there's God and there's the souls. The souls are also persons, God's also a person. So God is also sentient. So we also are sentient, right? But here, when we say Purusha here, in this sense, we're talking about the soul. The Purusha is composed of knowledge. That comes from Prashna Upanishad. Prashna means question. In most Upanishads, there are questions and there are answers. So anybody who's ever read Prashna Upanishad, it's got a lot of questions in it. So this is one of the answers that explains that the Purusha, or the soul, is literally knowledge. It's literally knowledge. And then the next comment, the next quote is coming. One should know it by its one characteristic of knowledge, right? So not only is it knowledge, directly knowledge, but it has the characteristic, or what was set up above, attribute of knowledge. 127. 127 is also true, right? Because the quote 126 here, the Purusha is composed of knowledge, comes from Prashna Upanishad. So that's Shruti Pramana. That's coming from the Vedas. That's a very strong proof. And then another one from the Vedas, from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 4.5.15, right? We have this statement that one should know it by its one characteristic of knowledge. So it has a characteristic or attribute of knowledge. So not only is it knowledge, but it also has the attribute of knowledge. If you understand that the attribute and the thing have slightly different meanings. In the sense of a soul, it doesn't make any difference, because the soul is both knowledge and has an attribute of knowledge. Okay, so the difference between a thing and its attribute would be more understandable to everybody if you've gone through more basic texts like Yadindra Madhudipika or some texts also like Tarka Sangraha, which is a book, a very basic book on logic and knowledge. Okay, so since the aforementioned subservience is held in common by all three kinds of souls, right? It's necessary to state that this refers to all three, right? Okay, so what are the three types of souls? Okay, the three types of souls are, we have number one, we have the Nityasuris. We have the people who are always liberated. They were always liberated, ever free, eternally free, eternally in Vaikuntha serving Sriman Narayana. These are called Nityasuris, eternally liberated souls, right? Then we have the Nitya Buddhas or the Bada Jivas or the Bada Chaitanas, right? Here in this material world who are covered, who are completely bound souls in this material world, going around in samsara, illusioned souls, right? Then, so that's the second type. And the third type is those who were bound, Bada Chaitanas, and who became free, who became liberated, right? Who became mumukshus, right? This is Mumuksupadi. This book is Mumuksupadi. It's a book for people who want to go from being bound to attain moksha, to be free. The idea of Mumuksupadi is to attain liberation. So for those persons, for the bound souls who became free, who've gone to Sri Vaikuntha, those persons are called muktas. So again, three types of souls: Bhadas, muktas, Nityasuris. Right? In some other, we call them Nitya. They can call Nitya Samsarans or Bada Jivas, right? And then they can be called Mukta Jivas, and they can be called Nitya Siddhas. They can also be called Nitya Siddhas. The Buddhists call them Nitya Siddhas. Same thing. There are three types. Okay, so now we're going to continue on. Right, and first of all, though, we're going to look and see what P.B. Anangacharya says about this particular sutra number 67. So, sutra number 67. He says, again, the meaning of the sutra is the makaram, the letter M that follows the ukaram, the letter U in Om, is the 25th letter starting from Ka in the Sanskrit alphabet. It also describes knowledge as it arises from the root for the word jnana. The root of the word jnana. Now remember, I said that in Sanskrit, there are about 22,000 roots, or 2,200 roots. And from those 2,200 roots, verbal roots are made all the different nouns as well. So nouns, all the different words in Sanskrit come out of those roots in different ways. So we discussed in the other book, we discussed how if you take the root man and you conjugate it, the verbal root man, and conjugate it according to the fourth or the eighth conjugation rules, right, that you'll get to think or to know. Okay, so here what he's saying is that the word jnana, or the word in Sanskrit for knowledge, actually comes out of that verbal root. Therefore, it stands for the Atma, or the soul, the individual soul, which is the 25th tattva, or principle in this world, and whose nature and quality is jnana, or knowledge. Whose nature and quality, that is, it's swarupa and it's guna, right? It's swarupa, it's nature, and its quality, its guna, right? Its attribute, right, is that of knowledge. So the commentary here says the third part of the pranavam, of Omkara, is the letter M, is now being explained. It is said that each of these aksharas, each of these letters is one tattva, explains one tattva, or one principle. Remember, there's three principles, right? Three principles and three letters in Om. The 24 aksharas beginning with ka, the 24 letters beginning in the Sanskrit alphabet beginning with ka and ending with ha will explain 24 tattvas in this material world, and the 25th letter or consonant will show, which is ma, shows the jivatman, which is the 25th tattva, as in, and he quotes some, he's quoting some pasaram here, which I'm not quite sure, okay, where it comes from. Also, the letter ma rises out of the root mana jnane. Mana is the root, and jnane means to know, and mana means knowledge, and manu avabodhane. Avabodhane means understanding, to understand, and as such, it stands for the Atman, whose knowledge, whose nature, and whose quality is knowledge. Okay, good. So we go back. Let's see the next verse. Okay, so text. Now we're talking about the three different types of souls, and then in Sutra 67, he says this refers to the entire group. What does he mean by the entire group? We just discussed the three types of souls. So there's a group. There's these three. There's three different types. So the letter M doesn't just refer to bound souls. It doesn't just refer to liberated souls. It doesn't just refer to ever free, ever eternally liberated souls. It refers to all three, right? So the letter M representing the soul therefore refers to the entire group of souls, right? So then a doubt arises, right? Whenever you say something, then somebody may come up with a doubt or somebody may have an objection. And this is how we go through the different scriptures, is that there are statements made, right? There are initial statements made or initial queries made, initial answers given. And then we want to work through to find out which is the perfect answer or which is the perfect statement. So if that's a perfect statement, if that statement says that the entire group is meant, then the question or the doubt might arise, can a singular noun refer to a group? Because if you have these three types of souls, and how can we refer to them with one letter or one group? Okay, so this is just an exercise in understanding how we can refer to them all, right? A singular noun refer to the whole group. To this doubt, he replies, this is a singular collective noun. A singular collective noun, right? So, for instance, in English, we might have the same word, which means singular and plural. In Sanskrit, we have singular, dual, and plural, but in English, just singular and plural. So we have, for instance, the word sheep. Sheep is a singular word. There's one sheep, but there can also be thousands of sheep. We don't say sheeps. We don't add an ending to make it a plural. It's just sheep. It means singular, it means plural. So it can be a collective noun also, right? So if a person refers to a mound of grain saying this grain, he uses a singular noun to refer to a collection. In the same way, this too is a singular noun which refers to an entire group of souls, those three types of souls. What characteristics possessed by the soul does this letter M refer to? Right, so that's the next question. So let's see what the other commentary says about Sutra 67 and 68. So the first sutra again, 67 and 68 come together here. The sutras say this makara, or the letter M, that speaks of the Atman, is the akshara that stands for all Atmas. Right? So it is in the singular. It is in the singular that points to the Atman's jati. The jati. It means the singular principle of the souls. Souls are a certain principle. When we say that there are three principles, there's God, there's matter, and then there's souls. When we say that there's one principle, but it covers three different types. the ever bound, the released, and the ever free types of souls, right? But there's still one principle. So that's the jati. The nature of the Atman is it's all Atmans are one type. So we shouldn't think that we're a different type of soul than the souls in Vaikuntha. They're a different type of soul than the ones that are freed or the ones that are in illusion, but it's the same type of soul, right? So the commentary says that the letter M in the pranava or omkara is in the singular. It's in the singular. It's ek vachanam. In Sanskrit, eka means one, vachana means to say or to speak, right? So ek vachanam means singular in Sanskrit. And therefore it stands for one Atma, right? So that's the idea, right? Therefore, is it correct to say that Bhagavat Sheshatvam, or the service to the Supreme Lord, described before about the Sheshatvam of only is about the Sheshatvam of only one Atma? So this is the question. The reason why they ask this question is, right? Previously, when we're talking about the letter U and we're talking about the letter A, remember we're talking about the letter A having aya on the end of it and meaning to be for or to the Supreme Lord and indicating service, right? So now when we say the letter M, does it mean that only one soul or only one soul or one type of soul serves the Supreme Lord? No. So Bhagavat Sheshatvam, which was talked about before, the service of the Lord, is applicable to all Atmas, to all souls. So, because somebody may doubt that. Okay, the people in Vaikuntha, they're serving the Lord. Surely they're serving the Lord. Maybe the people who are liberated, they're also serving the Lord. But what about the people who are in illusion, who are bound? They're also serving the Lord according to this. They're also serving the Lord. Atmas are divided into baddhas, muktas, and nityas. So bound, freed, and eternally free, right? And the Bhagavat Sheshatvam, or the service to the Lord, is a quality or attribute of all these Atmas, of all these souls. So how does it fit into the singular use of the letter M? Right? Pilalokacharya answers that the makara, or the M, here is jatya ekavachanam. Jatya ekavachanam. So its principle is one. Its principle is one. That is, the singular used here stands for the type rather than for a singular case. So it's not that a single soul serves Narayana. It's not that Narayana is served by a single soul. Sriman Narayana is served by not only by or a particular type of soul out of the three. And he's only served by the Nityasuris in Sri Vaikuntha. No, he's served by all of them. For example, if one says, umbrella sold in this shop. If there's a sign, it's raining and you need an umbrella and you see a sign that says umbrella sold in this shop, it does not mean a single umbrella, although the word umbrella is in singular. Umbrella sold in this shop, right? Of course, somebody might write umbrellas sold in the shop, but anyway, the example he's giving here is umbrella sold in this shop as a sign. It does not mean a single umbrella. Similarly, the letter M in Omkara speaks of the Atma Jati, or the type of Atma, or the principle of Atma, rather than a single Atma or a single group of Atmas, right? Therefore, it stands for all Atmas. It stands for all souls. Great. So continuing on with Sutra 69. So Sutra 69 says, this declares that the soul is a knower, or jnata, distinct from the body. Okay, so we know that very clearly. The soul is a knower, distinct from the body. The letter M, the 25th letter representing knowledge, declares that the soul, the locus of subservience, locus in Sanskrit, in Latin, locus means place, or the position. The locus of subservience. So the soul is actually the locus, or the source. It's the subservience is there in the soul. The locus of subservience, right? is the one who is the locus of knowledge. So the locus of subservience is also the locus of knowledge. Right. Thus, this distinguishes the soul from insentient matter, from achit, distinguishing the soul or chit from achit. But the individual soul goes around attributing the notion I to the body. I am God. I'm a God. I'm a man. I'm fat. I'm thin. So how is it that the soul is distinct from the body? Right? So he's asking this question. To this he replies, we have stated in the Tattva Shekara, which is another book by Peter Lokacharya, how the soul is different from the body. Might be a good introductory book to teach people, right? Because this is more or less the first principle that you have to speak about when you're discussing philosophy with people. He says that he's established in the book called Tattva Shekara that for many reasons the body is not the soul and is thus different from the soul. It is proper to state the nature of the substantive Dharma Ishvarupa, that is the soul, before stating the subservience, Sheshatva, subservience, which is the attribute or Dharma. Dharma means attribute. So why is it that in the pranava, the subservience is referred to first and then the soul, right? Remember, we have subservience mentioned in the discussion of the letter A. When we discussed Aya. A has an inherent Aya, which is a dative case, which means 2 or 4, which indicates service. And U, in Ukara also, service is mentioned, right? Bhagavat Sheshatra is mentioned in the explanation. Right? So normally what it says is normally you have to state the nature of something before you give its attribute. Right? You have to understand the nature of something before you give its attribute. But here, the attribute being the locus of what does it say here? The locus of subservience and also the locus of knowledge. Right? So remember, the first thing that he said here was the soul is knowledge and has the attribute knowledge. But the soul also has subservience, right? As Bhagavat Sheshatva to the Lord, has subservience. So why is it that we first of all said that the soul has the attribute of knowledge and is knowledge and has the attribute of knowledge, and then said that it has subservience second, because previously we already mentioned that it has subservience when we discussed the letter A and the letter U. Okay, so why is it that in the pranava the subservience is referred to first and then the soul? Why is the subservience coming first and the nature of the soul as knowledge, right, coming second, right, which is what we just understood from the letter M. Regarding this doubt, he gives the reason for stating it in this way. Okay, so first, before we go on, let's look at these 69 and 70 with P.V. Anangacharya's commentary. So again, 69, with this letter M, the Atma, whose quality is Bhagavat Sheshatva or service to the Lord, is shown as the vessel holding knowledge. Therefore, the difference between the Atma, the soul, and the body, which is bereft of knowledge, is shown. The Atma has several dharmas or attributes, such as Sheshatva, right, servitorship, right, Anjit Tatvam and Ananditvam. Also, Ananditvam means bliss, right, and Jnanatvam means knowledge. So, the Atma, the soul, has certain attributes. First attribute is servitorship to the Supreme. Second is knowledge. Third is bliss. Okay, so this letter M, which is the 25th letter, and which speaks of knowledge, speaks of the attribute of the soul, which is knowledge. By stating this, it is shown that the Atma is different from the Achetana, right? The Achetana, which is the body, right? There is an attribute, and there is something which is attributed to it, which is its essence, like that. So, continuing on to 70, the difference between the Atma and the body was explained in detail in the Rahasya Grantha, Tattvasekaram by Pilologacharya. So he's saying he wrote a different book about explaining the difference between the body and the soul. P.B. Nangacharya says, there are some that argue that the body is the soul and that there's no difference between the soul and the body. Then how do we show that the soul is different from the body? Pilologacharya declines to address this issue here, right? Thank goodness, because we all sort of understand that, or if you don't understand that, maybe you should go read Tattvasekara. But we've all understood this principle, right? It's a very basic principle. So that's why he declines to go into it in Mumuksupadi, because he assumes, Pilologacharya, the author of Mumuksupadi, assumes that if you got this far to Mumuksupadi, you probably understand that the body is different from the soul. So if you don't understand that, you can stop here and you can go read Tattvasekaram, his book explaining that. So he doesn't want to go into detail about that particular point here. He's already explained that in detail in another work called Tattvasekaram, right? And he refers to that document here for further study. So if you want to further study in detail the difference between the body and the soul, right? You can do that in Tattvasekaram. Okay, continuing on. Right. So he says, right, we've stated in Tattvasekaram how the soul is different from the body. He says how he established in the book called Tattvasekaram, and that for many reasons the body is not the soul and is thus different from the soul. Okay, so we discussed all that. So regarding this doubt, what is the doubt? The doubt is, why is it that normally when we describe the soul, the very first thing, as I said, the very first thing Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. So the very first realization that people come to is that I am a knower and not that I'm a servant. You understand? So I am knowledge, I am the knower, right? And therefore, but then later on we can understand that we're a servant. So why is it that in Omkara, first of all, the service is mentioned and then the knowledge aspect of the soul? That's the question. So text number 71 says, on account of their fragrance and brilliance, flowers and gems are desired. Right? So what is flowers look good. Sometimes they look good, but more often than not, a flower is valued for its fragrance, and a gem is valued for its brilliance, right? For how it sparkles. Right? So, like that, the soul is respected as a shesha, as a servant. Like that, the soul is respected as a servant. Without it, as it is said, we have no need for our soul. And this is a quotation. And this quotation comes from Tiruvaimoli 4.8.10. 4.8.10, which I am going to look for in a second. The soul is to be rejected, right? So without that, without seeing, if you have a flower that doesn't have any smell, if you have a gem that doesn't have any brilliance or any sparkle, it gets rejected. In the same way, if you have a soul which is not serving God, or is not serving, then it needs to be rejected. It's useless, more or less. To show that, it states subservience first, and then states the soul, So, just as flowers are desired as the locus of fragrance, and just as gems are desired as the locus of brilliance, the soul is respected as the locus of subservience. And this is more important than it being a knower, more important than it being a knower or having the or being knowledge or having the attribute of knowledge, right, is that the soul is subservient, right? So the soul has these different attributes, and out of those attributes, the more important attribute, the attribute of having bliss, the attribute of having knowledge, but the attribute of subservience is the most important attribute, and therefore, without that attribute, the soul is considered to be useless, according to Nam Alwar. We'll see in Nam Alwar's hymn, right? Why not when not a locus of subservience, if the soul is not a servant, as stated in Nam Alwar's hymn, which is Tirubai Moli 4810. He says, we have no need for our soul. We have no need for our soul. The soul can only be rejected, saying we have no need of a soul lacking subservience to the Lord. It's a waste of a soul, basically, to not serve the Lord. To show this kind of subservience, it first states Sheshatva and then states the soul. So, in other words, the Omkara, first of all, talks about the subservience of the soul before it talks about the knowledge aspect, what to speak of the bliss aspect, the knowledge aspect of the soul. So there's different attributes or aspects of the soul, right? And the first one to be talked about in the Omkara is Sheshatva, or servitorship to God. That's the first one. And because it's the primary one, it's spoken about first, right? So we always would come up with the primary thing first, and the secondarily, the soul is a knower, secondarily, the soul has bliss, but primarily, the soul is a servant of God, and that's his point. He gives the ultimate meaning. He gives the ultimate meaning stated by the Pranava, which consists of 3 words. Thus, the Pranava states the relationship between the Lord and the soul, as described in the hymn. This is coming from this quotation is going to come from Periya Tirumoli, 893. I am a servant to the one who dwells in the great Kanapuram. Kana usually means Krishna, Krishnapuram, Kanapuram. Do I belong to anyone else? Okay, so this is a Tirumangai Alwar saying here. Tirumangai Alwar must have been thinking of the meaning of the pranava of Omkara, for he stated the meaning of the letter M, referring to the locus of subservience, when he said, I am a servant, right? He stated the meaning of the letter A, which has the 4th case ending, right? Meaning Aya. Remember we were talking about A, meaning Aya, meaning 4th case ending, 2 or 4, Sriman Narayana. When he said, to the one called the Lord of Kanapuram, right? He was also thinking of the letter U, right? Remember the letter U means exclusivity, right? So do I belong to anyone else? Question mark, right? So he was also thinking of the letter U, which excludes subservience to others. I'm subservient. That's understood by the first part. I am a servant of the one, and who? The one who dwells in Kanapuram, meaning the Supreme Lord, right? And am I a servant of everyone else? No, that's a question, right? He was thinking of the letter U, which excludes subservience to others, when he said, do I belong to anyone else? Right? All that has been said above has declared the Shesha or servant and the Sheshi or master relationship, which exists between the soul and the Lord, according to the Alwar's glorious hymn. So, if we remember the story about Tirumangai Alwar, he was a prince who spent all his money building the Sri Rangam temple, and he was a minor chieftain or a prince. He had some money, and he did. Then, when he ran out of money, he began to rob people. One day, he was robbing a couple of people. The divine couple came and incarnated on horseback, and they came through the forest, and he attacked them, and he took all of their jewels, and he was unable to take the ring off the toe of the Lord. So he thought he will bite the stone out of the setting, and his lips and teeth touched the feet of the Lord, and he fell on the ground and realized that this person who I'm robbing is actually an incarnation of Lord Ranganatha. He's actually the same Supreme Lord that I'm trying to build a temple for. And at that time, the Lord initiated him into the Om Namo Narayana mantra, which we're talking about here, the Astakshara mantra. And therefore, he said at that time, I am a servant of the one who dwells in the great Kanapuram. Do I belong to anyone else? And the idea is that understanding the way he made this statement in Nalaya Divya Prabandham, the way he made this statement perfectly explains the way that Omkar is set up with the A, U, and the M. The A giving us the subservience, the Sheshatva, the Bhagavad Sheshatva, the subservience of the soul to the Lord, is understood in the letter A. The exclusivity that he's not subservient to anyone else is given in the letter U. And then later on only comes the understanding of the letter M as being a knower and having knowledge, right? And bliss and whatever other attributes the soul has. But the initial attribute, the most important and primary attribute, is that the soul is a servant of God. So that comes first. So that's the point. Yeah. Okay. And so that's proven by giving a proof from the Nalaya Divya Prabandham. Right. So Peter Lokacharya is saying that. The question comes up, why? Why is it given in a certain order? It's given in a certain order because that's the way we should think of it. The most important thing, the most important aspect of the soul is service to the Supreme Lord. Right? Service to the Supreme Lord and not to anyone else. That's the way it's spoken of. Okay. So then let's have a look and see what Divya Langacharya says about that. So text 71. The flower is liked because of its fragrance, and the precious stone is liked because of its brilliance. This is the meaning of the 71st Sutra. Similarly, the Atman, or the soul, is liked by the fact that it's enslaved to the Lord. Otherwise, what's the point of a servant if he doesn't have a master to serve? Right? The soul's primary aspect or attribute is service. What is the use of a servant if there is no master to serve and if there is no service going on? Right? Similarly, so the Atman is liked because of the fact that he's enslaved to the Lord. If the Atman is not enslaved to him, right, then it is to be given up. Forget about the Atman. Forget about having a servant if there's no master. If there is no master, if there's no service, what's the use of calling somebody a servant? Right? This is per Namalwar's Pasaram, right? His verse in Nalaya Divya Prabandham, which we just discussed. In explaining something, the correct order is to show the nature of the being first and then talk about its dharma. The nature, normally that's what we do. We talk about the swarupa and then the guna. We talk about the nature of something, the essence of something, and then we talk about its attributes. Right? So that's what he's saying here. That's normally what's done. But if that is the case in the pranava, then in the pranava, it is the atma that should come first, and its quality, which is sheshatva, should come afterwards. Right? Right? The swarupa of the atma should be talked about first, of the soul first. The essence of the soul should be talked about first. And then the attribute, which is sheshatva, the inherent attribute of the soul, which is one of them, right? Which is service to God, should come afterwards. That's normally the way it would go. So why does the pranava have the ukara, the letter U, first before the makara? shouldn't the M come before the U, right? In that case, right? The reason is as follows. In this world, we see that due to the fragrance that a flower is liked, and it is due to the brilliant light or the sparkling that a precious stone is liked, or a gem. In the same fashion, it is out of the quality of sheshatvam, or of subservience, that a soul is liked. If the soul does not possess that wealth, then it is to be discarded. So like if a flower doesn't have a smell, beautiful smell, if a gem doesn't have a beautiful brilliance, we throw them away. We consider them useless. So if there's a soul which isn't a servant of the Lord, isn't serving the Lord, right? Of course, we've discussed that all souls are actually serving the Lord. But let's say theoretically there was a soul didn't serve the Lord, then it would be a servant without a master, without serving. So it would be useless. Wouldn't be a servant anymore. So what is the pramana for this? What is the proof for this? The answer is in Nam Alwar's proof, Tiruvai Moli 4.8.10, which we just discussed. The essence of this verse is that the soul, which is not attached to him, should be discarded. So Yamunacharya too says this also in his Stotra Ratnam. Therefore, to emphasize the importance of servitorship, which is spoken of in this way by the acharyas, who are knowledge incarnate, sheshatvam, or servitorship, is placed ahead of the understanding of the swarupa of the Atman, the essence of the Atman, is placed after in the Pranavat, right? So we have U and then M, right? Okay. And Sutra number 72, the meaning is, by what was said thus far, the meaning told by the pranava or the omkara is the relationship between the jivatma and paramatma, or the soul and God, right? Which is one of shesha, sheshi, bhava. Bhava means the nature of, shesha, servant, sheshi, master, the master-servant relationship. This is per Tirumangai Alwar's verse in Nalaya Divya Prabandham, which we also just discussed. Thus far, all the meanings of the pranava was explained in detail. Now, its collected meaning will be shown, right? So we're now talking about all the meanings of the different letters in the pranava. Now we'll try to put them all together and understand it as a word rather than trying to dissect it into different letters. To show this, Tirumangai Alwar's divine words, right, are going to explain here, right? So we talked about this verse of Tirumangai Alwar. This phrase in the Pasanam literally looks like the pranava. His phrase, Tirumangai Alwar's whole verse, looks like the way the pranava is, A-U-M. It's explained like that. The meaning of the letter A with the hidden fourth case, meaning 2 or 4 Sriman Narayana, right? Aya meaning 2 or 4 Sriman Narayana, A meaning Narayana, Aya meaning Narayanaya, right? Unto or 4 Sriman Narayana, right? Is shown in the first part of the verse of Tirumangai Alwar. The meaning of the Makara is shown, which shows the Atma has the quality of sheshatvam, or servitorship, is shown by the second part, and ukara, which rejects being enslaved to another, is brought out by the other part. Okay, I think that was clear. Okay, so continuing on. Then, using the divine hymn of Pogai Alwar. So Pogai Alwar is the first Alwar chronologically. Pogai, Udit, Pei Alwars are called Mudal Alwars, or the first 3 Alwars. And then the fourth one is Tirumalasai Alwar. So Pogai Alwar, he wrote a pasaram, or he wrote a poem in Nalaya Divya Prabandham called Mudal Tiruvandadi. So the composition of Pogai Alwar is Mudal Tiruvandadi. So I believe probably they're going to quote from Mumuksupadi. Yeah, they are. Okay, so when using the divine hymn of Pogai Alwa to show that the recipient of subservience, right? Sheshatva pratisambandhi. Sheshatva pratisambandhi. Pratisambandhi means being bound to the subservience or the service of a couple. He explains, right, this relationship between the soul and the Lord, being bound to the subservience of a couple, right? So if one becomes the servant, remember we were talking about if you're the servant of the Lord alone, well, what about Lakshmi? You're also the servant of Lakshmi because the Lakshmi and Narayana are like a couple. And if a man or if a master in the house makes a contract with a servant, then the mistress of the house, the lady of the house, his wife, also becomes the mistress of that servant. And in fact, the mistress a lot of times is more the master than the person who is the actual head of the household. So then using the divine hymn of Pogai Alwa to show the recipient of subservience, Sheshatva Pratisambandhi, is a couple, he explains this relationship between the soul and the Lord. So in Sutra number 73, he says, this says, right, so he's going to quote Pogai Alwa Mudal Tiruvandadi here, Mudal Tiruvandadi 67. My mind looks up only to the one consort of the Lady of the Lotus. The Lady of the Lotus, of course, being Mahalakshmi. And it says here, I'm going to read the whole verse. Okay, the whole verse is, the flowing river looks only to the sea. The beautiful flower looks only to the rising sun. The soul looks up only to the Lord of Dharma, meaning Yamaraj. The mind looks up only to the one consort of the Lady of the Lotus, to the consort of the Lady of the Lotus, which means Srimad Narayana. So this hymn refers to the husband of Sri, who is the recipient of the soul's subservience, as stated in the letter A, when it says consort of the Lady of the Lotus. It states the soul's devotion to him alone, which results from being subservient to no other, as stated in the fourth case ending, Aya, right? Fourth case ending, and, right, Aya, so Narayanaya, or plus Ya, Aya, in the Omkara, right, means subservient to the Lord alone, right? And by the letter U, which, remember, means exclusivity, exclusively to Srimad Narayana. So, which it says, looks up only to one. So here, Tirumanga Alwar is constantly using this. He says the river looks only to the sea, the beautiful flower looks only to the rising sun, the soul looks only to the Yamaraj, and the mind looks only to Lord Narayana, the consort of Goddess Shri. It refers to the soul characterized by knowledge, as stated in the letter M, referring to the locus of Sheshatva or subservience, when he says, my mind. Thus, this pranava, the Omkara in toto, right, completely, states the relationship of the soul and the Lord according to this hymn, right? So according to this hymn by Pogai Alwar, right? This is explaining fully the relationship between the soul and the Lord. Heretofore, he has interpreted the meaning of the pranava or Omkara to be primarily the meaning of the dative case, the fourth case, right? 2 or 4, ending of the letter A, that is the Shesha-Sheshi relationship, right? He reveals yet another way to construe the pranava, which gives primacy to its root meaning of to protect. Remember, we were discussing this before, that the letter A can also be understood to be a verb root, which means to protect, which means to protect. So first of all, he's explained by the use of this pramana, or this proof from Mudal Tiruvandari by Pogai Alvar. He's explained the Shesha Sheshi, or the master-servant, the servant-master relationship in the pranava. Now he's going to explain about protection, how protection comes also in the pranava. So before that, let's see what P.B. Nangatraya has to say about verse 73, Sutra 73. So again, Sutra 73 says, with this pranava, with the pranava, as per Pogayal was Sri Sukti. Sri Sukti means pasaram or verse of Nalaya Divya Prabandham. Sri Sukti means beautiful saying. Pogayal was beautiful saying. Sri means beauty. So the relationship between the Jivatma and the Paramatma are told, correct? So we already discussed that. Previously, it was told that when he is protecting the Jivas, it is required that Lakshmi be present, right? And therefore, we talked about Sri Sambandham, or the fact that Lakshmi is always there in order for the Jiva to be protected, to have its protection. It is included in the Akara, and we've seen that previously in Sutra 40. Therefore, in the relationship between the Jivatma and Paramatma, the Sheshi is now shown as, the Sheshi, or the master, is now shown as the Divya Dampati, or divine couple. So it's now shown as the divine couple. The pranava, or Omkara, can also be chanted through Pogayalwa's divine words, right? Where he says, Sriman Narayana, who is the meaning of the letter A, and who is the master, right, is being told, and through the first part of it, and through some other words, the Atma's Sheshatvam, or servitorship, to the one Lord and no one else, which is shown by the dative case, the fourth case ending, right, of the letter A, and also by the Ukara, which talks about exclusivity, right, is told. Though Unav Vu, which is a part of the Pasaram, the Atman is shown by the Makara, the letter M, whose nature is knowledge and whose quality is that of servitorship, is told. Therefore, if one wishes to chant the pranava, the Omkara, if one wishes to chant the Omkara while bringing out Lakshmi Sambandha, right, while bringing out the subservience or the connection with Lakshmi, one can chant this pasaram, this particular verse of Pogai Alwar. So when if you're chanting Omkara and you want to remember that you're not only worshiping the Supreme Lord, but you're also worshiping the divine couple, and Mahalakshmi is included, then you should think about the meaning of this particular verse of Pogai Alwar in Mudal Tiruvandari. Okay, Mudal Tiruvandari 67, by the way. Okay, so it's getting a little bit complicated here because we are referring to the Nalaya Divya Prabandham, and we're getting quotes of the different Alwars, and we're seeing how the different Alwars quotes explain the different meanings brought out here of the Omkara. A little bit technical today, and with some grammar and some the quotes from Nalaya Divya Prabandham. There were some quotes from the Upanishads though before, giving some understandings. But
nice.
All in all,
I like that. Yeah, I like these Sanskrit explanations. Yeah, it's very nice. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Swami.